Most bourbon recommendations are useless, not because the person giving them does not know what they are talking about, but because they are built on hype, allocation status, and bottles that nobody can actually find. You spend 20 minutes reading a glowing review, you drive to 3 different liquor stores, and you come home with nothing, or you settle for something that was not on the list in the first place. That is not a recommendation. That is a treasure hunt with bad directions. So today I am doing something different. These are the only 10 bourbons I will ever recommend. Not the 10 best bourbons that theoretically exist somewhere in a warehouse in Kentucky. The 10 bottles that deliver genuine quality, that you can actually locate on a shelf, and that represent honest value at every price point. We are going from the bottom of the budget all the way up to the serious splurge. And I am going to tell you exactly what you are getting and exactly why it belongs on this list. Before we begin, let me know your favorites in the comments to see if we think alike, and let's get into it. Number 10, Wild Turkey 101, $25. Let us start with the one that never lets you down. Wild Turkey 101 has been sitting on the same shelf at the same price for what feels like forever, and that consistency is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate choice made by a distillery that could have easily chased premiumization and chose not to. At 101 proof, you are getting significantly more alcohol than the legal minimum of 80 proof, and that extra strength carries real flavor with it. Caramel, vanilla, a bold rye spice, and what bourbon drinkers call the Kentucky hug, that warming sensation that settles in your chest after a sip. The barrels used here are aged 6 to 8 years, which puts it well ahead of the minimum 4 years required for most expressions at this price. Jimmy Russell, the master distiller who has been making this bourbon since 1954, refused to drop the proof when corporate pressure hit the industry hard in the 80s and 90s. That decision is why this bottle still tastes like something worth drinking instead of something designed to offend as few people as possible. Put this in a fancy decanter with a handwritten label, and nobody would blink at a $60 price tag. It sits at $25 because Wild Turkey never decided their reputation needed a premium sticker to back it up. If you have never had a benchmark to measure other bourbons against, this is where you start. Number 9, Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, $20. This is the most underappreciated bottle in the entire bourbon world, and I will stand by that. For $20, you are getting a bourbon that carries a legal guarantee on the label. Bottled in bond means it was made by a single distiller in a single distilling season, aged for a minimum of 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, and bottled at exactly 100 proof. Every one of those requirements is mandated by a law that has existed since 1897. That law was created specifically to protect consumers from producers who were cutting corners and selling doctored whiskey. When you see that white label, you know exactly what you are getting. No blending tricks, no flavor additions, no shortcuts. Heaven Hill, which produces this at their Bardstown operation, is one of the largest family-owned spirits producers in America. They have the scale to deliver real bourbon at this price without sacrificing quality. Rich caramel, classic vanilla, and a backbone that holds up beautifully, whether you are sipping it neat or building a cocktail around it. Blind tasting panels consistently rank it above bottles costing 2 and 3 times as much, which raises the obvious question of why anyone would pay more for something that performs worse. The answer, as always, is marketing. This bottle does not have any. It just has very good bourbon. Number 8, Russell's Reserve 10-year, $40. Now we step into something genuinely rare for this price range, and I mean that literally. A confirmed 10-year age statement on a bourbon you can find for around $40 is almost an anomaly in the current market. Most distilleries have either pulled their age statements entirely or moved them onto allocated expressions that retail for $60 and above. Russell's Reserve quietly kept theirs. and the liquid inside justifies every year of that weight. This comes from Wild Turkey, the same distillery behind number 10 on this list. But the extra aging changes the profile in a meaningful way. The bright spice of the 101 has mellowed here into something deeper. Dried fruit, dark caramel, mature oak, leather, and a long finish with a whisper of tobacco that tells you this whiskey has genuinely been sitting in a barrel for a decade. Blind tasting panels have placed it alongside Eagle Rare and found it just as complex, sometimes richer. At $40, that comparison should be alarming to anyone who has ever paid $60 or $70 for Eagle Rare. The reason Russell's Reserve stays at this price is simply that it does not have the same cultural moment attached to it. Nobody is lining up at dawn for Russell's Reserve. That is exactly why it belongs on your shelf. Number 7. Four Roses Single Barrel, $45 to $50. Four Roses is one of the most technically interesting distilleries in bourbon country, and not enough people talk about why. Most distilleries work with 1 or 2 mash bills and 1 yeast strain. Four Roses uses 2 mash bills and 5 proprietary yeast strains, giving them 10 distinct bourbon recipes to work with. When they bottle a single barrel expression, they are selecting the best individual cask from that entire system, which means the single barrel delivers a level of specificity and character that blended expressions simply cannot match. In 2025, Four Roses expanded the single barrel lineup with new mash bill and yeast combinations beyond the original recipe, and early reviews across the expanded range have been consistently strong. The classic expression delivers floral notes, ripe fruit, light spice, and an elegance that feels almost out of place at this price point. This is the bottle that converts people who think they do not like bourbon. The flavor profile is complex without being aggressive, approachable without being boring. At $45 to $50 and reliably available, this is where your bourbon education really begins to pay off. Number 6, Maker's Mark Cask Strength, $45 to $50. The standard Maker's Mark gets passed over a lot by serious bourbon drinkers because it sits at 90 proof and leans towards sweet and approachable rather than bold and complex. That reputation does not transfer to the cask strength version, and that misunderstanding has kept this bottle criminally underpriced. Maker's uses a wheated mash bill, meaning wheat replaces rye as the secondary grain. That substitution creates a softer, sweeter character with less of the sharp spice you get from high rye recipes. At cask strength, which typically lands somewhere between 108 and 114 proof, depending on the batch, that soft character intensifies into something genuinely impressive. The sweetness deepens, the texture becomes almost viscous, and you get layers of caramel, baked bread, vanilla, and honey that would cost you significantly more in a high rye expression trying to achieve the same richness through a different route. Many reviewers have called this the best wheated bourbon under $50, and I have not found a compelling argument against that position. The fact that it shares a label with its more famous and more diluted sibling has suppressed the reputation it deserves. Do not let that stop you. Number 5, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, $60 to $70. Here is where things shift. From this point on, you are no longer buying convenience. You are buying a genuine experience that rewards your attention. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is released in multiple batches per year, and each one comes out at whatever proof the aging process produced, which is typically somewhere north of 120. That means every batch is slightly different, and it also means you are getting the whiskey exactly as it came out of the cask, with nothing removed and nothing added. The result is rich, complex, and completely undiluted in a way that diluted expressions simply cannot replicate. Dark fruit, cinnamon, toasted oak, a deep caramel sweetness, and a finish that keeps evolving for 30 seconds or more after the sip. This consistently ranks among the best barrel-proof expressions available without an allocation system attached to it. You do not need a relationship with a retailer to find this bottle, which at this price point and this quality level is genuinely unusual. Heaven Hill produces it, the same company behind Evan Williams, bottled in bond at $20, which tells you something about what this distillery prioritizes. They could allocate this and charge more. They have chosen not to. Buy it in batches when you find it. If you've made it this far, consider liking and subscribing. Let's continue. Number 4, Old Forester 1920 Prohibition Style, $55 to $60. Old Forester has been produced continuously since 1870, making it one of the oldest bourbon brands in American history. The 1920 expression takes inspiration from the era when bourbon production was technically illegal, but Old Forester kept producing for medicinal purposes, which is the kind of historical footnote that makes you appreciate the American relationship with alcohol in a whole new way. At 115 proof, this is the boldest bottle on this list below the barrel-proof expressions, and it delivers bold flavors to match. Dark chocolate, dried fruit, sweet tobacco, a long warming finish that builds and builds. This is the bourbon you open when something worth celebrating happens. The kind of bottle you pour for someone who thinks they have tasted everything and watch their expression change after the first sip. For around $55 to $60, the proof and the depth of flavor are genuinely hard to match from any other producer. Brown-Forman, which makes Old Forester alongside Woodford Reserve, has invested seriously in this expression, and the results are obvious in the glass. This is not a bourbon that coasts on heritage. It earns the recommendation every single time. Number 3, Blanton's Single Barrel. Retail $60 to $75 if you can find it there. I want to be transparent about something here. Blanton's is a genuinely excellent bourbon. The first commercially released single-barrel expression in American history, made at Buffalo Trace Distillery, stored in the coveted Warehouse H on the property, and bottled with that distinctive horse and jockey stopper that collectors obsess over. The flavor delivers a beautiful balance of caramel, honey, orange peel, and a soft vanilla sweetness that is hard not to enjoy. It belongs on this list because the liquid inside is legitimately special. But there is a caveat that you need to understand before you chase this bottle. The retail price of $60 to $75 is not the price you're going to pay in most markets. Secondary market prices and retail markups have pushed this to $150, $200 in many states. And some stores bundle it with other bottles you did not want. At retail, this is an outstanding buy. At $200 on the secondary market, it is a solid bourbon that is priced the same as whiskeys that deliver significantly more complexity. If you can find it at the suggested retail price, buy it without hesitation. If you cannot, put that money toward the next 2 bottles on this list and drink better for less money. That is not a criticism of Blanton's. That is just an honest assessment of how the market has distorted its value. Number 2, George T. Stagg, $150 retail, and it is worth knowing exactly what that means. George T. Stagg is part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, an annual limited release that represents some of the most serious bourbon making in Kentucky. In 2025, Stagg claimed the #1 spot in whiskey critic Fred Minnick's blind tasting of the top 100 American whiskeys, which is not a casual achievement. This is a bourbon aged approximately 15 years and bottled at barrel proof, which in 2025 reached 142.8 proof. That is not a typo. Nearly 72% alcohol by volume, and yet the flavors do not collapse under the weight of that proof the way lesser whiskeys would. Dark fruit, leather, bittersweet chocolate, tobacco, and a depth of oak complexity that can only come from that kind of extended time in a barrel. The suggested retail is $149.99 for every bottle in the antique collection. The secondary market prices bottles between $800 and $1,500, which is the part of this recommendation that requires honest conversation. If your state runs an allocation lottery, enter it. If a retailer you have a relationship with gets an allocation, get on that list. If neither of those options exists for you right now, know that this is what you are working toward and spend the year drinking your way up this list while you wait. Some things are worth the patience. Number 1, Glenallachie 12-year-old, $50. I am putting a Scotch at the top of a bourbon list, and I am prepared to defend that decision completely. This is a list of the only 10 bottles I will ever recommend, and the criteria is quality, value, and honesty in the glass. By every one of those measures, Glenallachie 12 belongs at number 1, and if you have spent any time with the other 9 bottles on this list, you owe it to yourself to understand why. Glenallachie just won World's Best Single Malt at the World Whiskies Awards. Not Best Value, not Best Under $50, Best Single Malt on the planet, and you can buy 2 bottles of it for the cost of 1 Macallan 12. Billy Walker, who transformed GlenDronach into the cult favorite it became before he moved on, has done exactly the same thing at Glenallachie. The focus is entirely on quality sherry cask maturation, higher bottling strength, and no chill filtration. The result is dark chocolate, stewed fruit, baking spice, and a sherry depth that normally costs you twice the entry price. Online whiskey communities have run blind tastings putting Glenallachie up against bottles costing 2 and 3 times as much, and the results are not close. This is the bottle you open for someone who thinks expensive equals good, and you watch that assumption dissolve by the second pour. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to address something that comes up every single time a list like this gets published. Someone in the comments will ask why Pappy Van Winkle is not here, why Buffalo Trace is not here, why the William LaRue Weller did not make the cut. And the answer is simple. A bottle that requires a lottery ticket, a retailer relationship, or a secondary market transaction is not a recommendation. It is a fantasy. I cannot in good conscience tell you to go and find something that the vast majority of people watching this will never be able to locate at a fair price. That is not helpful. What is helpful is knowing that the 10 bottles on this list exist on real shelves in real stores, and that every single one of them will make you question why you ever paid more for something with a better-known name. That is the actual promise of a genuine recommendation. Not the best bottle that exists somewhere in theory. The best bottle you can buy this week with real money and actually open. The bourbon market right now is noisier than it has ever been. New limited releases drop constantly. Prices keep climbing on allocated bottles, and the gap between what a whiskey actually costs to produce and what it sells for on a shelf has never been wider. In that environment, the skill that matters most is not knowing which bottles are great, it is knowing which bottles are honest. And every bottle on this list is honest. The proof on the label reflects what is actually in the glass. The price reflects what the liquid is worth, not what the marketing department decided the brand could command. And the flavor delivers on whatever the bottle promises without cosmetic shortcuts designed to make it look better than it is. I want to close with something that cuts across every bottle on this list, because there is a pattern here worth naming. The bottles that earn their place, the Evan Williams at $20, the Russell's Reserve at $40, the Glenallachie at $50, they all have one thing in common. Nobody spent the marketing budget on them. The money went into the liquid instead. The bottles that carry the most asterisks, the ones I had to qualify with secondary market warnings and availability caveats, are the ones where the brand story has outgrown the whiskey inside. That is not always the distillery's fault. Sometimes a genuinely great product gets captured by its own hype, and the market takes it somewhere the producer never intended. But understanding that dynamic is the single most useful skill you can develop as a whiskey drinker. Price is not quality. Scarcity is not quality. A famous name on a label is not quality. What is in your glass right now is the only thing that matters. So here's what I want you to do. Start at the bottom of this list if you have not worked through it yet. Spend real time with Wild Turkey 101 and Evan Williams' Bottled in Bond before you move up. Understand what honest bourbon tastes like at every price point before you spend more. When you get to the Glen Aller Key, pour it alongside one of the mid-range bourbons from this list and pay attention to what changes and what stays the same. That exercise will tell you more about your own palate than any review I or anyone else could write. The best bottle is always the one that earns your attention, not the one that demands your money. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, and please drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Until then, see you in the next one.